Friends, I want to welcome you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ to this message for Sunday, July 5th. We are continuing the sermon series, Unraveled, and today we are looking at being unraveled by uncertainty. And since our Bible story is about water, I'd like to tell a story from Megan McKenna about two groups of battleships who were on training maneuvers. The weather was really bad, and so by the second night, the captain of one of the battleships decided to spend the night out on deck trying to make sure that things were being safe and done properly. As the dawn approached, he received a message from one of his officers that there was a light ahead. And so when he inquired if it was moving or steady, he got the message that it was steady. So he asked them to send a message to, in his mind, it was a battleship. So he said, send them a message to change course by 20 degrees. When he received the message back from them, he was really upset because it suggested that they change course by 20 degrees. And so he was furious and started to pull rank. And so he said, I am the captain of a battleship. You need to respect my position, and you need to do what I tell you to do. And so the response came back saying, I am second class, ensign second class, and I hope that you will listen, that you need to change course. And so by that time, the captain was really furious and sent a very terse message saying, you need to do this immediately when we are on a collision course. And finally, he received a response saying, I am a lighthouse. And so the battleship turned, as you can imagine. I love this story because at first it's funny, but then also it is a story about uncertainty and certainty, in the sense that this captain was so certain that he was right. And that's how sometimes we live life. We want that sense of certainty. We feel certain about the things we know. Yet in this time of great uncertainty, the pandemic has brought a sense of fear and lack of certainty and a sense of anxiety with it, because that's our normal response. We try to control. When we feel like we're out of control, we try to find ways to control. But today's message is to really open your heart to a different way, and knowing that God, in these times of great uncertainty, can do the best work. And so today we look at the story of Peter attempting to walk on water. So let's listen to this story.
Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go to the other side of the sea, while he dismissed the crowd. Then, after the crowd had gone, Jesus went up to the mountaintop alone, as he had intended from the start. As evening descended, he stood alone on the mountain praying. The boat was in the water some distance from land, buffeted and pushed around by waves and wind. Deep in the night, when he had concluded his prayers, Jesus walked out on the water to his disciples in their boat. The disciples saw a figure moving toward them and were terrified.
It's a ghost!
A ghost? What will we do?
Be still, it is I. You have nothing to fear.
Lord, if it really is you, then command me to meet you on the water.
Indeed, come.
Peter stepped out of the boat onto the water and began walking toward Jesus. But when he remembered how strong the wind was, his courage caught in his throat and he began to sink.
Master, save me.
Immediately, Jesus reached for Peter and caught him.
O you of little faith, why did you doubt and dance back and forth between me and heeding fear?
Then Jesus and Peter climbed into the boat together, and the wind became still, and the disciples worshipped him.
Truly, you are the Son of God.
So I hope the story gave you a sense of how things happen in terms of the symbolism of faith, in terms of looking at someone like Peter, who was really passionate and wanted to walk with Jesus, but fear and the waves overwhelmed him, which is a natural human reaction. But in those moments of deep fear, Jesus reached down and helped him and rescued him. That's how faith works. It doesn't take away the challenges, but helps us to find a way through them. Now, this story is really important for the development of the disciples, because they were experiencing a time of great fear. This was a time when they had received news about the execution of John the Baptist. John the Baptist was a prophet, but he was also Jesus' colleague in ministry and cousin. And the news of him being executed was especially sad, because it meant that Jesus could be next. And the disciples knew that they could be next. So this story comes as an affirmation in times of great anxiety and uncertainty about the future. It gave them that depth of relationship with Jesus that wouldn't have been possible before. As Peter yells out and seeks help from Jesus and is rescued, and they get back into the boat, the disciples say an incredible affirmation of faith. They say, "Truly you are the Son of God." And I love that part, because they wouldn't have said that before. They had that experience, that powerful experience of faith that helped them move beyond the uncertainty of the moment. And they used a title that would have been reserved to the emperor. The emperor was seen as the Son of God. So this was a political term. And so it was even more dangerous than one would think. It wasn't just an affirmation of faith, just in a theoretical, theological way. It was something that they looked at as a political statement, an allegiance to Jesus over the emperor. So you can see that this experience of almost drowning, of almost perishing, really was important, that they would let go of the fear and anxiety of their time to embrace the faith that Jesus was offering them, that touch that God was never going to let them go. And so I want to tell you a story from this book called Finding God in the Waves by Mike McHargue, or he's also known as Science Mike. He tells about his own personal experience of faith, of losing faith. He grew up with a very fundamentalist faith where the Bible had to be literally true or factual, and there was no room for questioning, for doubt, for science. And so as he got into science, he lost his faith. And he pretended for a couple of years to have faith, and finally he told his wife and he told his mother that he had lost his faith, that he had become an atheist. And as it happens, he was going to a conference in California about creativity. It was being led by a famous writer and pastor, Rob Bell. And in that conference, he confessed his atheism and told them about his experience. But then at the worship toward the end of the conference, there was a moment of communion. And he doesn't know why he was led to go up and have communion, but he did. And at that moment, he heard the voice of Jesus. Now, for him, it made no sense. This was just a mystical experience. And so he went out that night and went to the beach because he couldn't sleep. So he said, I walked down the steps at the back of the hotel to the beach. It was between 2 and 3 a.m., dark and still. I looked at the ocean, but it was so black. I couldn't tell where the water ended and the sky began. A powerful force that I could hear and feel but not see. As metaphors for God go, that was pretty good. So I faced the waves and started to pray. I said something like this: God, I don't know who or what you are. I don't know anything about you. I don't know what your relationship to the Bible is. I can't unlearn all the things that made me believe you aren't real. They're still there, and they tell me you can't exist. If you're real, if you have consciousness, will, and power, tell me, how can I be here? Why did you bring me to California to learn about you from a famous preacher, while right now children are starving to death all over the world? And then he continues to share his doubts and questions about God. And then he says, so let's make a deal. I will try to do the best I can to do good in the world. I will serve others and I will work against suffering. But I have to keep asking these questions about your justice and mercy. And I can't forget about science. Let's keep talking about this, you and I. I don't ever want to be away from you again. I can't do that anymore. All I know is I met Jesus tonight. And then he says, when I said the word Jesus, the waves rushed up toward me. I was standing up on the beach, 25 feet or more above the waves, but the water still rushed up and over my feet, all the way to my shins. I thought about that what Rob had said, that Christ's last act of service before his crucifixion was to wash the feet of his followers. I said, is that you, God? Is this really happening? And the whole world fell away, like the veil lifted from the face of a bride on her wedding day. And so then he reflected, of course, on these mystical experiences that cannot be explained by science or anything, but really are so part of our human experience because they transcend the mind. They connect to the soul, to something deeper within us. And so he says this about certainty. I've learned that the need for certainty is an addiction that we can kick, that it is possible to have faith and even follow Christ without needing to defend historical Christianity like a doctoral thesis. We can approach beliefs not as gems to be mined from the earth and protected with clenched fists, but as butterflies that land on an open hand as gifts to enjoy but not possess. And so, friends, in both the experiences of Peter and Mike McHarg, you see this openness to mystery, this sense of trust that God continues to be with us beyond our certainties, beyond our belief systems. And that is the good news for us. That it's not dependent on us. It is not dependent on that sense of control that we so crave, but that in those moments of great doubt and disbelief sometimes, or uncertainty, that's where we can really lean into learning a new way to love, to live by the flow of grace in our lives. And so as Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, and I want to send you with these words, our goal should be to live life in radical amazement. Get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually. To be spiritual is to be amazed. May it be so. Amen.